In this episode, I'm in Gorongosa National Park in Mozambique, chatting to the CEO of Gorongosa Safaris, Doug Flynn. Hi everybody, welcome to another Stanley Safaris Podcast. I'm very honored to be joined by Doug Flynn, the CEO of Gorongosa Safaris. And this isn't a green screen. We're actually sitting in Gorongosa, which makes this even more special. So thank you for joining me today.
Pleasure.
I know you are
Welcome.
very, very busy.
Yeah, really good to have you.
I've been dreaming of this place my whole life. You know, it's one of those iconic national parks. And as a South African, you grow up knowing these places.
Yeah.
And so for me to finally be here is amazing.
Awesome.
It's amazing. But it's not about me. We want to hear about you and your story and the incredible stuff that's happening here in Gorongosa. So you're not from Africa, clearly. What is your background and how did you get into the safari industry and how did you get into ending up here in Gorongosa?
Yeah. Firstly, welcome, Sean. Really appreciate the time and you're making your way up to this wild place in Mozambique. So my background is I actually grew up in the bush in Zambia. So I was very fortunate to have a very unusual upbringing. I was homeschooled along the banks of the Kafue River in southern Zambia. And so my love of the bush wasn't a choice, it was just inevitable. I was just totally immersed in it as a child with my sister and my family. And our entire family is really obsessed with wildlife and conservation. My parents were they were very actively involved in the establishment of private conservation in Zambia, so supporting the state protected areas with private conservation, and that's where I grew up on a game reserve in Zambia, and from there it really wasn't a choice. I had no choice. I just absolutely love it.
Yeah, amazing. And so growing up there, when you left school, then what were your next steps from there?
So I'm always been fascinated by the natural world. That's been my guiding compass of everything I've done. So I left when I was stopped schooling in the bush. I did boarding school in the UK. So I went to the UK, hence the accent and everything else, and then did my tertiary education there and worked there. But really always the question I have been trying to answer in my professional career is how do we pay for African protected areas? Early on I read the research by Peter Lindsay of the Lion Recovery Fund about the gap between the funding requirements of our protected area state on this continent, which is larger, more diverse, and I would argue more exceptional than any other continent. But the funding gap was just enormous. So many governments had made huge commitments to protect, but required significantly larger budgets from their own resources and from partners in order to actually deliver the protection in real terms.
And that's always a problem when governments they have so many other things that they need to be looking at. Do you find that the natural world is quite far down their pecking order?
It's a great question. I think actually the challenge is not to do with individual governments. It's the fact that actually our entire economic system, the global system on which we all depend, has catastrophically failed to price in the value of natural places. So look at where we're sitting now. The services that Gorongosa provides in terms of clean air, carbon storage, carbon sequestration, clean, productive soils, flood prevention, are just actually almost incalculable. But we have started to know that value, but what we haven't done is actually priced it in and start paying for it. So you and I get our fresh water, we get our clean air, we get even our food is not adequately priced for the services that we're getting. So that is always
even though we're sitting here in Mozambique.
Yes.
the impact of what you just said here is a global impact.
Absolutely.
It's not just here in Africa that it's
Absolutely.
being felt. It's a global impact.
Totally agree. I mean, there are literally hundreds of millions of tons of carbon. I mean, we've done the calculations, stored here in Gorongosa. There's billions of liters of water, stored and slowly released like a sponge. Obviously, yes, global climatic effects, global weather effects, food production, social stability, you name it. These are global impacts. And I think we'll come to the Gorongosa story in a second, but I'll just give you one fact that brings it to life. So this is not a political statement, it's hopefully a factual one, but at the moment, the conflict in the Middle East is costing $2 billion a day, at least, to destroy things, right? Bombs and rubble, etc. That's roughly equates to about $100 million an hour of cost that's being spent. Now, just over $100 million is has been spent by this one individual, Mr. Greg Carr, on Gorongosa, and then we can see, you've seen this morning driving around, you've seen last night, here's 1 million acres of restored wilderness with abundance that's really, really hard to describe to do it justice. And to me, that's the dichotomy. It's like, actually, we do have the capital, strangely. That gap that I talked about, that Lindsay and others researched, that's not an intractable gap. It's a gap of choice. It's like we are spending billions, hundreds of billions on things, in my view, that are not good for society. And we have the opportunity to spend it on things that are objectively, measurably positive for society. And I see a big part of my role, and that's why it's a great honor to be invited to speak, and thank you. I see a big part of my role in communicating that and inspiring people to say, actually, let's not think that environmental destruction, loss of African protected areas is an inevitability. I can promise you, Sean, it's not an inevitability. It's a matter of choice. Greg, a very committed team around him for the past 20 years, has made a choice that, despite all of the problems, and we can discuss some of the challenges, the choice is that we can make a beacon of hope, an absolutely thriving ecosystem, but much more than that, a social project, a social example for communities and the people of Mozambique. And we can do it, and we can make it work. And $100 million is a lot of money to you and I. It's an hour's worth of bombs and and destruction. So let's just reflect on that and make decisions. Yeah.
Sure. Jeez.
Yeah.
A bit speechless after that.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Going back to your story, then, you left university. And you came back to Zambia.
So I was actually based in the UK for a long time, but often working between the UK and Zambia. And I worked with Werner Meiberg of the Peace Box Foundation and his team on the Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier project and others. So always, as I say, trying to answer this question of how do we finance these places? Because fundamentally we can talk about the root causes of loss of protected areas. We can talk about the loss of species and populations. We can say it's about poverty as a big driver. We can say it's about lack of infrastructure, lack of job opportunities. But fundamentally, protection of these places does require capital. It requires finance. And so when you strip it all back, I tried different avenues, looked at it different ways. It always comes back to, okay, how do we pay for it? And the tourism business in Gorongosa, is a really important pillar. Doesn't answer all of our questions about how we create tens of thousands of jobs. Excuse me. Doesn't answer, maybe the $100 million revenue question, but it's a really, really important part of the puzzle. And that's why I am, really proud to be part of this team and leading this business, because I really feel we can do some really great things. And fortunately, we are already doing a lot. We're basically 100 people now as a business. We have our beautiful camps that you'll have seen and will see over the next few days. We have a fantastic team of really, really motivated, energized, keen to learn people who love to showcase Gorongosa to the world, and are rightly incredibly proud of Gorongosa, of Mozambique, and the role that they're playing in protecting this place and hopefully leaving it in a better place than we all found it. So very proud of that.
And so, Greg,
Yes.
an American guy.
Yes.
How did he end up here? What is his story with Gorongosa? And you were telling me earlier, there's an amazing comment in the comments in the visitors book there, from 2005.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the first time he came here. Was it just a holiday back then?
Yeah, it's a wonderful story. So Greg is a really deep human rights advocate and philanthropist. That is a big part of where his heart is. Obviously, I can't speak directly for Greg. This is my, I'm telling his story on his behalf. And so he actually, once he had the resources and he had made the decision to pivot his energies and his capital towards philanthropy, one of his first contributions was to found the Carr Center for Human Rights at Harvard University, as a really high quality facility for the promotion, research of human rights. Now, in the early 2000s, Mozambique was recorded as the poorest country in the world, with enormous development challenges, and the president of Mozambique was invited by Greg and his team to go and speak at Harvard, at the Carr Center for Human Rights, and through that they built up a relationship. And His Excellency the President invited Greg to Mozambique and said, "Come and see our country and let us discuss what we can do to work together." Greg spent several weeks in Mozambique, traveled the country. But actually, it was an accident of fortune, I think. He was back in Maputo, about to fly out in his hotel, and he hadn't settled on the thing. I would say he's an all-in, he's an all-in kind of person. Yeah. And I think something hadn't quite clicked. What was it going to be? And he's also highly strategic in how he thinks. So he's trying to work out the puzzle of how can I most effectively contribute to this country that's really wants to be on the path of recovery after the true horror of what it's been through. And somebody said to him, "Have you been to Gorongosa?" And he said, "Where's Gorongosa?" Sure. So he changed his flights, cancelled his flights out, and came to Gorongosa for a 3-day trip. Flew over in a helicopter and looked down at this remarkable place with the southernmost tip of the Rift Valley, the lake in the middle, these enormous expanses, the diversity, and something in him clicked. And he said that, looking down, that's the place. And he, yes, you reference it on his way out, he wrote in the visitor's book then, "This could become one of Africa's great parks once again with a little assistance." Yeah. And that little assistance had turned into, as I say, more than $100 million of his own money. Sure. But actually, just as importantly, probably more importantly, is the fact that Greg has not been mailing checks from overseas. Yeah. He has been here in the sweat and the dust of Gorongosa since 2005, and then 2008 when the project really kicked off. Since then, 20 years of actually, getting rolling sleeves up, getting hands dirty, and getting involved. And I said it when we were chatting before. Yeah. It's not easy. It hasn't been easy. Yeah. The challenges that have been thrown at the team over 20 years are enormous. But the partnership with the Mozambican government has held strong. Yeah. Yeah. And despite cyclones, the resurgence of civil conflict, unfortunately, at some stages, COVID, you name it, political disruption from overseas. We're now in the middle of a global economic crisis, potentially. But the team has, and the project has remained. And I give enormous credit to all those that have been before, and Greg for that resilience and that just relentless, unshakable belief that actually this is worth doing in a country that has had such difficult past, but is hopefully now on a really positive trajectory.
Incredible, because it would have been so much easier for him just to have given up back in the day when he was going through all those issues before signing on, and he's stuck by it, and as you say, a lot of money has gone into it. And the as I said, Gorongosa for me was always high up there, one of those iconic national parks in Africa, across Africa, and it's gone through its phases.
Yes,
a lot of that was a lot of poaching, a lot of the wildlife got completely wiped out. And at that low point, what sort of numbers are we talking animal-wise?
Look, it's almost it's very, very hard to describe when you see it now how suppressed the numbers were. So we're talking about a 99% plus loss in many species and a 95% loss in many others. Wow. So 14,000 buffalo used to roam the plains here in Gorongosa, and they were down to less than 100.
Yes.
Less than 100. So it's almost incomprehensible. Lion, the estimates were somewhere between 6 and 15, and many of those were three-legged lion because they'd lost a paw to gin traps. I think what's staggering to me, and I'll talk about this more in a second, is that there was actually a total extermination of hyena, an incredibly resilient, tough predator, as we know, and leopard. Leopard being a very versatile, very adaptable a species that can prey on very small animals. It doesn't have to have a high prey base like lion, and they were wiped out. And it just shows you the extent, the crucifying pressure of human pressure in those days, particularly through snaring and gin traps. But also the large herbivores were being taken out at large scale, including from even helicopter gunships, to feed armies, for them to be taken off the coast and shipped off to other jurisdictions, not just in Mozambique. So it was an enormous and devastating time, and also for the human population. From that period of conflict was extensive and long and just unspeakably brutal and awful. But of course, there's the other side now, which is to say, actually, nature has an extraordinary ability to bounce back. My late father always used to say, you don't have to give nature a chance, you have to give it half a chance. You have to give it half a chance. And Gorongosa has been given that chance and has absolutely rebounded. So I gave you some of the numbers before. 110,000 large animals individually counted in end of 2024 from a helicopter. Wow. Individual counts, more than 110,000 now roaming these plains. Thousands of the larger herbivores now, buffalo and wildebeest. The antelope species, I've never seen that level of abundance anywhere in southern Africa, and the predators behind them thriving. 300 odd lion, 250 plus wild dog, hyena coming and breeding exceptionally well, etc., etc.
So, as I said earlier, for me, it surprised me just how many impala, waterbuck, nyala, kudu, wildebeest, just continuously as you're driving, and we hear. You can see how lush it is. So the bush is quite thick, but we're still seeing huge numbers. It's amazing.
It's mind-blowing.
Incredible. And then we saw some lion this morning as well. Incredible bounce back. And as you said, it doesn't take much.
No.
It doesn't take much for nature to bounce back and work itself out.
No, exactly. Incredible. And that is the lesson of positivity and hope, and I think that's always been the message and part of the motivation for for the Gorongosa Restoration Project is to fight against the narrative of decline, fight against the narrative of things are getting worse. Actually, we have the ability and the agency and the choice to make things better. And there's still so much that we want to do in Gorongosa. I think it's a good point to talk about the phase we're in now is almost a sort of a chapter 2 in the restoration story, which is that our for-profit businesses, tourism, agriculture, and aviation, that we have under the Gorongosa umbrella. One of those that I run, Gorongosa Safaris, but the two others, aviation and agriculture. All of us, we're for-profit businesses, we are independent, but 100% of profits are circulated back into the restoration project. And it's the idea that hopefully a little bit of a sense of what maybe the broader global economy in a future utopia would be, in that we rely on the services that Gorongosa provides as a tourism business. We rely on these extraordinary landscapes, these incredible wildlife, and therefore it's only right that we actually pay for those services, whereas in many cases those services are given for free or assumed and not paid for and extracted. And so the shift is that Gorongosa is really pursuing this model. Greg describes it as community-based capitalism, which is the force of capitalism, the dynamism of capitalism, the the finances, etc. But with that conscience to say, actually, we're not here to take money out of Mozambique and run away. We're here to utilize in an ongoing way, in perpetuity. I mean, if you think about it, that's what's wonderful about tourism, is that it should, if done in the right way, allow this park to generate revenue, to sustain itself and create jobs in perpetuity, if we do it right.
That's very important. It's for our guests knowing that the money they're spending to come to these amazing places is staying here and not going offshore to head office, corporate head office expenses. And like we were saying earlier, it's one of the reasons we only book and put our guests into privately owned camps and lodges with a huge commitment to local conservation and community, and they can feel that, they can see that when they're in places like this, and so that's very, very important for us.
Definitely, and I really commend you guys on what you're doing. It's really, really fantastic, and it means a lot. And talking before the podcast about the names that you support, like the classic Zambias of this world, I mean, they're just doing fantastic work, and it means it actually is practical conservation and community impact. Everyone talks about it, but there are people that are really, really doing it. I think we're at a very exciting phase. We're proud of what the team has done over the past few years. We think we've put some amazing foundations in place. We've got 7 days a week, an Airlink flight comes just next door to us. We've got our own fleet of aircraft to bring people in. We fly people directly to Mozambique's 2,500 kilometers of pristine coastline. It's a magic proposition. And we feel we're ready. We've got a lot of expansion to do. It's 1 million acres. We take the responsibility very seriously with our partnership with the government to develop this, and not just be happy with a small tourism business. We have to develop. We have to create more jobs. We have to build. But we're also very grateful to the tourism industry, people like yourself, Sean, Stanley Safaris, and others that are helping us get on the map and tell the story. And we have been very, very fortunate to have lots of support, and we're very ambitious about what we're doing.
I think for guests coming here to be part of the first to come back,
exactly.
I think that's quite exciting.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of negative media around over tourism in certain parts of Africa, and when you come to somewhere like this, and million acres, and how many beds have you got between
32
them? You're not seeing other people. You're not bumping into other people. You're not having to queue for sightings. You're not having to share sightings.
No, definitely not.
You have this pristine, incredible wilderness to yourself, and I think that's fairly unique in African or in world terms now.
Exactly.
It's fairly difficult to find. I just want to go back a little bit to the community aspect.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was something that you had said on your social media about a speech that Greg gave where he was talking about the importance of conserving places like this.
Yes.
And it's about keeping girls in school.
Yes, exactly.
Talk us through that, because I think that's hugely powerful.
Yeah, it's a wonderful philosophy, which I think we as conservationists, I count myself as a conservationist. That's what I'm here for. We have to adapt the models that we're applying and our philosophy to the realities of the 21st century, to the reality of a continent that will add, another billion people in a few decades' time. By the end of the century, 1 in 4 people will live on this continent. We have to adapt to that, and this is not about adding more guns and more fences. Ideally, it's about looking at the root cause of things and saying, okay, how do we balance the needs of people and the needs of wildlife in a future state? And yes, Greg put it beautifully. He was invited to speak at an event once in the States, and was asked about the question about the future of conservation, and he simply said it comes down to 3 words. And yes, people were expecting him to say more guns, more fences, more drones, whatever. And he simply said, girls in school. And that is essentially saying that, yes, we need to support people to have choices and agency about their own future, particularly about reproductive health. Because if we do, then people will make decisions that are likely to be much more in tune with the natural world, in tune with a finite planet with finite resources, and we believe that Gorongosa has put its money where its mouth is over the decades. Huge investment in girls' clubs, we call them, after school clubs for girls particularly, but then huge focus on preschools, that early education, to give children, particularly girls, the opportunity for education and ultimately the opportunity to decide what they themselves want to do. And there are a huge number of very inspiring Mozambican colleagues, female colleagues, one of whom is behind the camera, Gennaro, one of whom is just walking over there, Shami, Benild. We have so many wonderful female leaders, and many of whom have actually come through the system of a girls' club, seeing somebody in Gorongosa go and inspire them as a mentor, and then coming through the system. So I don't think you've met her yet, you might, but one of our guides at Mazimu, where you're staying, Dadova, she is the youngest qualified, level 2 qualified guide in Mozambique, and she's on her way to be the youngest and only Mozambican walking guide. So she'll be a female guide, but actually she'll be the first walking guide in Mozambique, which is it's just fabulous.
Yeah, amazing.
And that's I said I'm a conservationist. That's where my heart is. But actually, the biggest motivation and the biggest thing that I've enjoyed in my time at Gorongosa has been just playing a small part in supporting people growing and developing, and just seeing them absolutely fly. And it gives me, I'm restless to do more. We're nearly 100 people now, but we should be 200. Well, I'd love us to be 1,000. So we've got to keep moving and get moving, because Mozambique has a very, very young. So 51% of Mozambique's population is 18 or younger.
Sure.
More than half. So that is a demographic. It's a demographic opportunity. So that's youth and dynamism, creativity. If handled well, if there's job creation, if there's opportunity. If it's handled badly, that's a demographic time bomb for everyone, Mozambique and beyond. So we are a tiny cog in the wheel, but we're trying to play our part.
Yeah. Well, 1 million acres is not a tiny one you're looking after or helping with.
Yeah.
So let's shift to the why. Why?
Yes.
Why should people come here? What makes this so special? Who should come here? And what are people doing when they come here? And the reason I'm asking is that when we talk to our guests, we tailor make everything we do. When we talk to our guests, a lot of people think of Africa and they're coming and it's the big five and it's safari and sitting in a game car vehicle, and not necessarily realizing there's a whole other side of being on safari, walking safaris, boating, the community, all of that side of it. And it's not just ticking off the big five. So what should people expect when they come here, and why should they come in?
Great question. The word why is probably the most powerful word in the English language. I think the why is clearly what we're trying to do here in the center of Mozambique, the southern tip of the Rift Valley, where this devastating history did happen, and yet you are seeing the results. We are sitting in and amongst some of the results, and so people often come to Gorongosa because they've heard about the wildlife, they've heard about 300 lion and 250 wild dog, but almost everyone leaves because of the story and the impact and the feeling that it's we get one shot, without getting too philosophical, we get one shot at being here, and to be reminded that we have the agency and the ability to make positive change happen, and people can be a part of that, because that's not a throwaway statement. That is to say, we don't have external shareholders. Our only shareholder is the park and its people. And just by being here, just by visiting, they genuinely are making a contribution. And hopefully then they will also become advocates for supporters of the park externally. Specifically in terms of the experience, as I say, grew up in the bush. I'm an obsessive wildlife person, have been fortunate to visit parks, protected areas across the region. I don't think I've ever been somewhere with the density of biomass of wildlife than there is here. Particularly the antelope species, just you referenced it, exceptional abundance, but also the diversity. I mean, E.O. Wilson, this magnificent scientist, the person who coined the term biodiversity, Professor E.O. Wilson, who was a friend of Greg's and came here many times, wrote a book about Gorongosa. Our research laboratory is named after him.
Sure.
He described Gorongosa as the most biodiverse park on earth, which is a pretty amazing thing. I'm sure others would, say, well, the cloud forests of Peru or whatever, but he's the guy who invented the term, so we can give him a bit of a bit of credit for that. So the diversity is amazing. There's a lovely quote that I like, which is to say that that was written many years ago about Gorongosa, in that one day you can see shades of the Mara, the Okavango, and the mountains of the moon in 24 hours. And it's true. We have these vast floodplains. We have the lake. We have riverine systems. We have fever tree forest, palm forest, and we have true rainforest on the mountain. And everything in between. So whether you're a birder, whether you're an insect freak, whether you love the big iconic African mammals, they are here. It's not going to be exactly like other parks, it's a very different experience. You're seeing it at a time when the vegetation is extremely thick. Sometimes you're driving through almost a tunnel of vegetation. Then it opens out into this water that's just sitting everywhere. Vast numbers of water birds particularly, but just life that comes from water. So those things, the diversity, the uniqueness, and then I always love to just say to people, look, imagine if we took a drone above us now and just kept going and just looked at where we are.
Scale.
The scale is mind-blowing. We are sitting, having had a lovely brunch on this pan after a drive in 1 million acres. 1 million acres, and it's basically just us. I did the maths, 175th of the vehicle density of the Masai Mara in peak season. And then beyond the 1 million acres, there's expanse as well. There's just wild areas, protected areas to our north, to the Zambezi River and to the coast. So, I love people to look up at the stars at night and just remember where they are and sit and look up and think, imagine if I could look down at where I am now. I'm just in this magnificent place. And it's the Rift Valley, this wonderful scar that runs down the eastern side of Africa, where increasingly the scientists based here and internationally are discovering fossils, ancient fossils of our hominin ancestors, which makes it look like one of our key ancestors lived here and possibly walked out of the Rift Valley here all those hundreds of thousands of years ago. So it's also I think a historic and special place for the continent.
So I've been all over Southern and East Africa, and I'm trying to think of a more beautiful park than this. And the fever tree forest for me, that does it. Just the colors, these big open pans like this. It's stunning.
Yeah.
And I've only been here one night so far. I'm absolutely blown away. It's definitely lived up to and exceeded expectations in terms of what I was gonna see and do. So
no, that's great.
Amazing.
And I think my personal philosophy is also that we are part of a much bigger ecosystem of people that are in the fight to look after, protect, leave a legacy for Africa's protected areas. So I see ourselves as part of that wider philosophy, and we're doing our little thing here, but a lot of the people that you work with are also doing fantastic work. And when we see East Africa and we see huge vehicle queues for river crossings, we see traffic jams, it's unseemly, it's unsightly, but to me it also points to a huge opportunity, which is that it's not a demand problem. It's not like we're sitting here and saying, oh, well, people don't want to come and see 1 million acres. They don't want to come and see elephant. They don't want to come. Of course they do. But at the moment, we've got a distribution problem, which is that, and an awareness problem, is that people think that African safari experiences, visiting the bush, means going to those, literally 5 or less places on the continent. And our job, your job, is to increase that awareness and increase that opportunity for people to spread that energy, and most importantly that finance. I come back to the money question. Follow the money, spread that money around, and then we can create fantastic impacts across the continent.
So I would change it in that it's not it's your job to spread the awareness. And you're doing amazing. I think it comes down to our job as a travel agent dealing with the clients to go, don't be part of that problem. That's the easy solution. Go and have the migration and everything else. And it's our job to go, no, don't be part of the problem. Let's bring you into these very special places and go and experience these incredible places that are out there that aren't as well known, that don't get the same social media showcase that some of these other places get. So,
exactly.
It's our job to educate our guests and bring them to these sorts of places, because it's
definitely
special. To be part of some of the first people to come back.
Exactly.
That's unique.
And ultimately, travel as well. Why do people travel? They want to have an experience that changes them and that moves them in some way. And I do feel that the likelihood of them being moved in some way, and what you want for your clients is having an extraordinary experience, that they feel alive, that they are reconnected to the privilege of being, the infinitesimally small chance of being alive, and they're reconnected to that and they are moved. I think the chances are higher in a big wild place where there's nothing. I mean, look, we struggled to find a level piece of ground because there's hippo tracks, there's elephant, there's waterbuck, there's everything. You know, that is what we want to expose people to, and then I think we're in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is why you have to come here. Absolutely, there's no question about
Exactly.
it. Yeah, very
Awesome.
special. Thank you so much for having me. It's I've still got a few more days to go, and looking forward to that. It's been an amazing start, and it's been fascinating talking to you and hearing more about the behind the scenes that a lot of guests don't necessarily know about. You know, they come and they stay in these beautiful lodges and camps, and the service is great and the food is great.
Yeah.
The wildlife is amazing, but there's this whole back story that goes into why these places are still here. So, fascinating to hear it from you, and thank you for your contribution and Greg's contribution as well.
Brilliant.
Amazing. Thank you.
Sean, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Lovely to have you.
Thank you.
Cheers, man. Thanks a lot.
The story of Gorongosa National Park has to be one of the most inspiring conservation stories in Africa. In the next episode, I speak to a good friend and somebody that is living the dream. Andrew from Kenya Choppers talks all things helicopters and northern Kenya.